Brian Worrell, Chair of the Committee on Small Business and Professional Licensure. It is Thursday, April 20th, 2023. Happy 420, everyone. And we are here today for a remote hearing on docket number 0171, order for a hearing regarding diversifying cannabis models. This matter was referred to the committee on January 11th, 2023. The sponsor of the docket number 0171 is Councilor Julia Mejia. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law and relieving public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that public bodies conduct this meeting in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public. The City Council will be conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom and is being recorded. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibilities while ensuring public access to its deliberations through adequate alternative means. The public may watch this hearing via live stream at www.boston.gov/city-council-tv and on Xfinity 8 RCN 82/files 964. It will also be rebroadcasted at a later date. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. If you wish to sign up for public testimony and have not done so, please email Ron Cobb at ron.cobb@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. This afternoon, I'm joined by my colleagues, the original co-sponsor, Councilor Julia Mejia, and Council President Flynn. And we have received a letter from our Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, Chief Idowu, which I will read into record. It is dated Thursday, April 20th, and it's titled to the Committee on Small Business and Professional Licensure regarding Committee on Small Business and Professional Licensure hearing on docket number 0171, order for a hearing regarding diversifying cannabis models. Chairperson Worrell, members of the Committee on Small Business and Professional Licensures, and members of the Boston City Council, I regret that I'm unable to join you for this important conversation today due to a sudden illness. I would, however, like to thank you for giving me and members of the Economic Opportunity and Inclusion Cabinet the opportunity to share our perspective on docket number 0171, order for a hearing regarding diversifying cannabis models. We appreciate the sponsor of this hearing, Order, Councilor Julia Mejia, for introducing this matter, as it has been part of the ongoing work of the Cabinet to expand opportunities for participation in the legal cannabis industry. As you know, the vision of our Cabinet is one of resilient, equitable, sustainable, vibrant city that centers people and creates opportunities to build generational wealth. We are also committed to employing all strategies to help revitalize the Boston economy as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. The topic of this hearing today is one that, with collaboration with this body, will help us move closer to realizing this vision. Participation in the legal cannabis industry can be an important way of building wealth and redressing past harms on communities of color and families impacted by the failed war on drugs. That's why the Cannabis Equity Team within our Business Strategy Unit has been working during the years since legalization to promote pathways into the industry, including providing technical assistance and grant support. The team has found, however, that more often than not, entrepreneurs in the industry are mostly focused on opening a dispensary and not so focused on participating in other aspects that would be just as lucrative. Council Mejia is correct to point out in a hearing order that barriers to open and brick and mortar storefronts still exist, especially for individuals interested in opening up a cannabis dispensary in the city of Boston. Former City Councilor Tito Jackson, who himself now owns a dispensary, has famously quipped that opening a dispensary can cost an entrepreneur upwards of $1 million. This is a barrier to great many who seek to become first-time entrepreneurs via the legal cannabis industry, and is impacting the city's ability to ensure that racial equity exists throughout all parts of the industry. While the city has made strides to provide resources to entrepreneurs to open their first or second storefront via initiatives like the SPACE program, these efforts are federally funded, and so programs like this cannot support cannabis entrepreneurs. A A member of our team has quipped before that the people who profited most during the gold rush are those who sold the picks in the axes. The city, through our office, is committed to ensuring that entrepreneurs have a broad understanding of all the opportunities available to them within this industry and to supporting their efforts to start or scale their business venture. It is in the interest of the city to ensure that all of the corners of the legal cannabis industry are robustly supported, have healthy competition, and are racially equitable throughout. Our teams look forward to the discussion on this matter and to rolling up our sleeves and working with the City Council to spread awareness of the opportunity and resources the city is providing to help diversify the legal cannabis industry. Sincerely, Shagun Idowu, Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion here at the City of Boston. Now I would open up open statements to my council colleagues in order of arrival, starting with the original co-sponsor, At-Large City Councilor Julie Mejia.
Thank you, Councilor Morrell. And before I get started, I wanted to just advise central staff that we've gotten some emails from folks who are still trying to get the email link. So just wanted to flag that. And if there's anything else that they should be doing aside from sending an email, to let us know on air so that they can do what they need to do to get on here for public testimony. So before we get started, I wanted to just acknowledge and thank the work that has been done to get us here. And I think Councilor Morrell and the opening remarks that you made from Chief Idowu really sets the stage for the amount of work that has gone on to get here. And I'm so incredibly happy that Councilor then Tito Jackson is here with us on this journey still. I'm so happy to have you here as a panelist, and I also want to uplift the work that their Kim Janey, City Councilor, then our Mayor, has also done in collaboration with community. And I think that as we continue to have this conversation, we really are looking for the most collaborative approach to ensure that we all get to where we need to be without having unintended consequences. And Jay, you have pointed out in the past that in the policymaking space, what sometimes might look good on paper, after it gets implemented, has unintended impact. So as we continue to have this conversation, want to make sure that we are keeping that front and center. So in 2016, Massachusetts voters approved Question 4, which legalized the recreational use of marijuana for individuals aged 21 and over. It was a step to promote racial justice and address the inequities created by the criminalization of cannabis use. However, and we know this, individuals who have been mostly greatly impacted by the cannabis industry have not been fully had the opportunity to fully benefit from the new industry. Just 6%, okay, 6% of marijuana businesses in Massachusetts are owned by people who identify as Black or African American, according to the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. One major issue is the high cost of entry into the legal cannabis industry, including licensing fees, real estate costs, and compliance expenses, which has created significant barriers for small businesses and entrepreneurs for low-income communities. It has led to a concentration of ownership and control in the hands of smaller number of well-funded, predominantly white-owned businesses, while many people from communities of color have been left out of the industry. Individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds often do not have access to necessary capital to be able to explore cannabis businesses in the same way wealthier individuals can. Applicants looking to receive approval from the city need to secure a retail location and begin paying for rent on that location before they can even set up shop. This means that individuals must pay pricey retail space rent in Boston, and we know how difficult that is, before they can ever even make their first sale. The process of opening up a marijuana establishment can take months, meaning that individuals must commit their time. This is a significant barrier, as we know that minority individuals must support their families, and they cannot wait for cash to cash a check in the future. Another obstacle in the current model continues to be the fact that individuals convicted of offenses such as distribution are disqualified from participating in the current model of the cannabis industry. Instead of fostering entrepreneurship and rehabilitation, the model perpetuates existing social-economic inequities so that individuals most impacted by the war on drugs continue to be shut out of the industry. The current model of the cannabis industry lacks awareness of existing issues and challenges that need to be addressed to create a more responsible, sustainable, and equitable industry. Diversifying the cannabis model would allow individuals with less resources an entry into the industry, allowing them to get their foot into the door, literally. It would also promote creativity and accessibility. And it is Boston's responsibility to level the playing field for all participants and encourage wealth building in the most vulnerable communities. And I'll just say before I turn it over back to the chair is that this whole idea came about last year. We passed residential kitchens in the city of Boston as an ordinance to allow small businesses to be able to incubate in their homes because they couldn't afford to open up a brick and mortar. They couldn't afford a food truck. But we found a way to create an opportunity for folks to be able to build their businesses and at least get a leg up and start. It was through that work that we were inspired. What other ways can we utilize this model to help expand and diversify the cannabis industry? And when we first presented it on the council, we got a lot of pushback because opening up a retail cannabis shop in your home where there's so many regulations is going to be a lot harder. So what we did is we worked in partnership with other folks who have far more experience than we do. And we started exploring what are some of the other possible ways that people can enter this industry that are low cost, low threshold, but that can also build economic wealth. And so through this conversation, it is my hope as those who are living the realities and doing the work, that we can work alongside the city to have a can-do attitude and figure out what is it going to take for us to be creative, innovative, and to meet this moment so that we have folks who want to make edibles, food infusion, you want HVACs. There's so many different opportunities, and we need to make sure that we're meeting the moment and creating as many as we can. So I'm really excited to be here with you all today. Thank you, Chair, for bringing us together, and I seal the rest of my time.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Now we'll go to, we also been joined by Councilor at Large, Councilor Ruthie Louis Jen, but now we'll go to Council President Ed Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your important leadership on this, along with, as Councilor Mejia mentioned, City Councilor at the time, Kim Janey, later Mayor Janey, and also former City Councilor Tito Jackson, who provided strong leadership in making sure that the voices of people of color were heard at City Hall in this growing business. And I've been proud to support several proposals in my district and including Tito's, and I know he's going to do an exceptional job with the new store that he just opened. I also want to highlight one other issue, maybe for discussion, or maybe not. But when we do have a cannabis establishment owned by a person of color in a particular neighborhood, let's also factor in, let's support that owner, but let's not try to establish another cannabis location near that owner, because establishing another cannabis establishment near that owner of color would have a negative impact on that owner, in my opinion. It's just something to think about. I want the owners to be successful. I want the owners of, especially the owners of color, to be successful. But when we have an owner of color or a woman that owns an establishment, and when someone is coming to propose an establishment close to that owner of color, we should consider that as a factor in our decision making. Something to think about. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Council President Flynn. Now, I'll recognize Councilor Louis Jen for any opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the makers, Councilor Mejia, for bringing this order before us. We, as city councilors, even as a new at-large city councilor, this was an issue that I just kept on hearing from different folks, especially Black and Brown, fledgling entrepreneurs, about the need for us to be leaning more into this work and making sure that we are making sure that our entrepreneurs of color, especially, and those who have been persecuted by our criminal legal system when it comes to possession of marijuana, are the ones who are able to really be the beneficiaries of laws and rules relaxing the use and distribution and sale of marijuana. So I support greater regulatory flexibility to also bring into existence a lot of the desires when a lot of these ideas were first being floated. I know that we've come a long way, but there's still a lot left for us to go around meeting what we wanted to accomplish when it comes to equity sites, when it comes to consumption locations. So I know that there's more work to do here, and want to commend my colleagues for their work. There definitely needs to be some regulatory flexibility if we do want to live out the dreams and objectives of this industry, while not setting anyone up for failure, right? Not leading. I think Councilor Flynn was alluding to this, Council President Flynn. Oversaturation is not going to help anyone if people aren't able to compete competitively, if markets and areas are oversaturated. So I'm happy to be part of this discussion. I'm sure someone has already made a 420 joke, so I won't do it, but great alignment of when this is happening, and just thank my colleagues for having this hearing. And hello to former City Councilor Tito Jackson, and congratulations on the opening of your dispensary in your spot, Apex Noir. And there's so many on here who have also just been starting up their own spots. So just congratulations to everyone.
Thank you, Councilor Louis Jen. You would have been the first to make a 420 joke.
I'm sure I'm not the last, though.
And I would just say we're here on 420 because Tomas was the one who strategically said, he laid out the whole strategy for how we're going to get this work done. And so thanks, Tomas, that we're doing this on 420.
Awesome. I have just a few quick opening remarks. As Councilor Mejia highlighted, our Black and Brown, our BIPOC citizens spent decades being targeted under the failed war on drugs, leaving thousands with criminal records and barriers to entering any industry, let alone on working with the very product that led to their incarceration. These folks have spent the last decade watching the very business that led to their incarceration become a largely legal and highly profitable industry. Those who were jailed were left on the sidelines, while wealthier, better connected, and often whiter counterparts dominated the industry and the scene. None of this comes as a surprise, and course correction will require that we look at all aspects of this new industry as we work to reduce barriers of entry for all entrepreneurs, but especially for those unfairly targeted under previous policies. Boston does better when our residents have a fair shot. We as a city council owe it to our constituents to ensure that they have adequate pathways that does not depend upon their skin color or wealth. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. And I thank Councilor Mejia for her leadership and everyone here joining us today to join in on this conversation. So we're gonna start first with the advocate panel. And that advocate panel consists of Tomas Gonzalez, Director of Community and Advocacy at Amplify Latinx, co-owner and chief of staff at SEED/Core Social Justice Cannabis Museum, Ty Gomez, co-founder and managing partner of Greenlight Business Solutions, and Albert Einstones of Blunto, Jen, and sorry if I'm saying your last name incorrectly, Fagel, please correct me, Executive Director of Commonwealth Kitchen, Jess Chameleon, owner and CEO of Low Key LLC, Jeanette Cook, CEO and founder of Queen Cures, and Leslie Delaney Hawkins, partner at Prince Lobel, chair of the firm's restaurant and hospitality industry. So we'll start first with Tomas Gonzalez. For his presentation, everyone will have, I want to say 4 minutes and 20 seconds to present, but I feel like that's a little short. So we'll give everyone 5 minutes to present, and I will raise my hand when your 5 minutes is up. So Tomas, the floor is yours.
Well, I want to thank you for having us on, Chairman and Councilor Mejia. So my name is Tomas Gonzalez. I'm one of the co-owners and co-founders of SEED, the Core Empowerment. We are also the location of the Core Social Justice Cannabis Museum. It is a location that basically speaks directly to the impact that prohibition has had on Black and Brown communities across the country. And get ready for our second exhibit, which is called the Caribbean Impact. But our location for day one has always sort of dealt with this issue and tried to be a platform for these discussions. I do want to thank the City of Boston. Last year, we had the opportunity to host the Boston Cannabis 101. I think that was a great precursor to a lot of these conversations. It was a way of figuring out how to get social equity and economic empowerment applicants closer to operation, closer to opening their doors. And we were, again, honored to have participated in that inaugural opportunity and to have a good host of folks really interested in getting into the space and moving it along. Today, for all intent and purposes, I want to draw at least the council's attention to badged employees in our industry, something that maybe a term that a lot of people are not very familiar with. So employees in our industry apply to a location and they get interviewed and then ultimately hired. Then they go back to the company goes back to the CCC and provides that information, and then they get what's called badged in our industry. In our industry, 70% are white employees or white males. And that means that the other remaining 30% are everyone else. I sort of illuminate this so that in all of the other discussions that I'm sure we're going to have today, this is one of the areas that I think we should ultimately all look at. And it's a top-down approach in many ways and in many areas, but it is definitely a goal that needs to be sort of taken on and changed. If we're looking at how to move this industry forward, the sheer fact that those numbers alone don't help our cause and only speak to sort of the disparities that already exist and we all know. So that's my presentation for today. So I'll yield my time. Do I have time? I'm just
Yeah, no, you still have time. You have 2 minutes and 20 seconds. But if you're not...
Man, I was trying to hit the 420. No, I'm kidding.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tomas. And also part of this panel, my apologies, is former Boston City Councilor of District 7, Councilor Jackson, who's also the owner of Apex Cannabis Dispensary. And we will go to Councilor Jackson.
Thank you so much. And if you'd like, Mr. Chair, I will definitely take Tomas's time, but I digress. I want to wish everybody a happy...
Your past experience on the BCB, that's easy.
Oh, ho, ho, ho. Hey, nothing wrong with the 45-minute presentation. But first, I want to thank the chair as well as Councilor Mejia for bringing this very important issue to the forefront. It is something that is critical that we continue to watch And there are a bunch of different mechanisms that are occurring in our space. So I do want to, Tomas, drop some knowledge on you guys relative to the employee side. I would say really proud that 80% of my employees are BIPOC and 20% of them have a Corey. And we actually are proactively Corey friendly, and we advertise ourselves to be Corey friendly on purpose. But it is also, there are some very real challenges that we have. And I heard Councillor Flynn bring up one of the challenges, which is the issue of location. When I was on the council, there was a statement made that we did not want to have a green mile. And in the area that I am in now, there are now 7 approved dispensaries within about a half a mile radius. As noted, and then the other component is one of them is a person of color, but actually lives outside the city. They're 200 feet from me. I have another one 2 blocks up the street. I then have another one that's going to be opening, and they're friends of mine, but it's Devonshire and Water Street. And then there was recently one approved in Faneuil Hall. So and then in addition, there's one at French Street, and then in addition, there's one at the corner of Milk and Washington Street. Why does this matter? Unlike restaurants, Tomas doesn't sell Italian food, and I sell Thai food, and someone else sells pizza. We actually have generally the same range of products. And so what we are doing by doing this is we are negatively affecting businesses that are owned by people of color. So those employees that I told you about, when we highly concentrate folks in areas such as this, it actually takes away from our ability to do something that Tomas and I do kind of naturally, which is actually hire people of color, elevate people of color, and give them opportunities to be able to open up additional businesses. Because we actually are we have a program where we actually invest in our own folks' abilities to open businesses, kind of different than most corporate jobs. So I think it's absolutely critical that the council weigh in and give guidance on this component about the hyper concentration of licenses in a specific area, because it definitely is of detriment and negatively affects businesses owned by people of color. And I would note there are no white-owned businesses that have this. Shouldn't say no. Most of those businesses don't have the same level of concentration. But and also, I'm not a multi-state operator. I'm someone who's from the city of Boston, and we did our best to actually get here. So that's one critical component. I also do need to help folks understand the marketplace that we are in. Because we are federally illegal, we have a 50% federal tax and over 20% state tax. I'm going to say that one more time because it hurts. It's a 50% state federal tax and over a 20% state tax. So and 2 years ago, when I thought I would open, wholesale pounds were $4,500 a piece. We are now in a day and age where those are around $1,300 a piece. Why does that matter? Because the huge green rush that folks thought was going to come did come for some who were open early, but the margins are much slimmer than they were. So I think that's another component. I would also note one of the biggest issues that was left undone, and I'll close with this, is that those who are not in the equity program get to sell their license if they wanted to, possibly. They have that opportunity. But in the current legislation, if an individual is part of the equity program, this transference of a license is basically precluded. Why does that matter? It matters because most exits are generally the largest amount that an individual would actually make. And the objective here was not only for us to have equity in cannabis, but the real underlying objective was to build wealth. And so it shouldn't be that the multi-state operator businesses can actually make transactions and make hundreds of millions of dollars, and that the people of color who are involved in the program that we have actually put forward may not have that access. And what I would submit to the council is there should be some sort of sunset clause on that component. I absolutely don't believe that people should just be able to flip their license. Like you get it and flip it. That's not at all in the spirit of what we're talking about. But what we should have is people 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I don't know what the time frame is. People operating their business, but they should actually have an opportunity if they met the qualifications and had the opportunity to potentially make an exit, which would then create an opportunity for wealth to be built in our communities. The detriment, if we can't sell and the market goes down and goes away, one of the things that you also need to note, because we are federally illegal, we are actually not allowed to file for bankruptcy. And so there's not an actual normal business exit. So it's basically you got to make it work or not. And so all of that said, it's 1.5 to $5 million to get into this in the city of Boston. And these are dollars that don't come from banks. And, you know, for Tomas and I can't speak for everyone, these are real people. We're not talking about institutional investors who are tossing us money. These are real folks whose money is actually on the line. And that's why I have to speak about these issues and the issue of the buffer zone and the like, because we not only are negatively affecting me, but it also ripples out into the range of real people who've taken real money that matters to them to be able to invest. So I would hope that the council is able to step forward on many of these topics and issues. And props to Councilor Mejia for beginning to think of innovative models and how folks can do this. I see Jen Fago on. I think there's a possibility of that type of innovation with some thing that kind of works with the CCC, the centralization component, and for them to deal with all of those machinations. But I think there is a place for some innovation. Lastly, we need to focus on and lead on social consumption in the city of Boston. It is a social justice issue, because understand, if any of your folks are in Section 8 housing, if they get caught consuming, they could actually get kicked out of their housing and not be able to apply for that program for at least 2 years. So we have created a legalized space, and this is equivalent 1929. Let's say alcohol is legal with no bars. We have an opportunity to actually create additional tax revenue, additional jobs, additional experience by having social consumption in its broadest form. I would submit to you, people who are doing infused massages should be considered social consumption. I would submit to you, people who are doing infused yoga, which that won't be me, but infused yoga, that should be there. And I'll also submit that even having an infused restaurant and people being able to consume, if we're actually being real about dealing with issues around what's happening in the illicit market, that is actually something that is a real piece, and we should actually pull it in, control it, and make sure that we have those opportunities. I thank you for this opportunity to come before this board, and I want to be your partner in this and be helpful in any way that I can, because this is real. And again, a huge shout out for 420 and huge shout out to the amazing folks that work on my team who gave us an opportunity to have a wonderful grand opening this weekend. They are the people who we do this for. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Jackson, and congratulations again on your grand opening, and always bringing the wisdom and the heat at the same time. I appreciate your advocacy, and always a pleasure to hear you speak, and thank you. for being here in this room today. Now we'll go to Ty Gomes.
Councilor Rowe, just really, I don't mean to interrupt, but I know that Jeff from Low Key is going to need access to screen sharing. So after Ty, if he can go and maybe we can make sure that he facilitates the screen sharing component, or he can send the PowerPoint presentation, but he has a PowerPoint, just so you know.
Okay, Ron, are you able to give Jeff access, or should he share the?
We're checking now. Send it to me and I'll get it over to Ethan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Councilor Rowe, I'm just trying to line things up so that, you know.
I appreciate it, Councilman here. Now we'll go to Ty Gomes.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, the presentation that Jeff is about to share with everyone, I've had an opportunity to see, and it's pretty impressive, and I'm in full support of it. Everybody, my name is Ty Gomes. First and foremost, I'm a father, a native of Massachusetts, and a cannabis entrepreneur. I am a transplant. You know, I live in California. I have for a long time. I've been in the cannabis industry for 12 years. I have an expertise on the retail side, commercial cultivation, product manufacturing, and cannabis licensing. Been doing cannabis licensing for almost 5 years now. A co-founder of a bunch of projects in the cannabis space, Albert Einstein's being one of them, 3 licenses that were secured right when the rec program rolled out in California. El Blunto, Simply Stone Age, Chill Hill, LabX, Black Mule. You know, these are projects that I was a part of that I founded, and as mentioned, Greenlight Business Solutions. So most of my work with Greenlight Business Solutions, which is my focus these days, has been helping people to navigate licensing. So I'm very aware of the challenges that are there, the barriers, the financial component, actually navigating licensing, and then the real estate component. I've participated with Greenlight in Massachusetts Social Equity Program as an instructor since the first cohort. So I have a lot of perspective, and that's kind of the angle that I'm coming from. I'm honored to be invited to this panel, appreciative. I'm excited that you guys are talking about these things. I think a lot of the things that we're going to discuss, or the ideas might be polarizing, and that's okay. I think they're supposed to be. But I think there are opportunities to deal with all of the issues that are brought up today, especially this concept of undue concentration that really affects retail the most. But some of my ideas that I support are kind of in the opposite direction. I believe that we can create a lot of opportunity in establishing a pathway for cannabis co-location. And maybe that doesn't work for retail, but I know that it works for models like cultivation and product manufacturing, because it's actually happening in almost every cannabis market right now. It's just not happening in a way that's licensed and regulated. It's happening legally, compliantly, and successfully. It's allowing businesses to enter into the space and be competitive without having to deal with all the barriers. The thing is that they don't actually have the license. They're operating under someone else's license. And they don't have direct access to metrics, which can present its own set of issues. But this concept of co-location, I think it really could work well, especially to the benefit of social equity participants and small business owners and minorities trying to enter into the cannabis space and trying to be a processor or build a product, build a brand. Because what it would do is it would mitigate one of the biggest hurdles of getting into the industry, both financially and the real estate component. So imagine there was a facility, they are all expensive, but imagine if there was one that was big enough to house multiple license holders. So essentially you'd have to either create another license type or modify a license type that allows a person to co-locate, and they would share expenses. You know, they would share like traditional costs, like obviously the cost of the facility, but like ancillary services and cleaning services and insurance and equipment. And then also this co-location could promote collaboration. Small business owners could share their ideas and their networks. They could share their knowledge or their resources. right? To provide an environment where they could actually help each other. I think that this could essentially fast track or create a pathway for people that don't have the resources. Just kind of get your foot in the door, because the reality is there's a lot of learning that has to happen. Getting your license is one part, one challenge. It's like a whole business, and it takes forever, and it's really expensive. But the other part is once an SE participant or somebody new to the industry gets into the space, you have to make some mistakes the hard way, just by learning, just by doing, and those mistakes can be costly. So if we can mitigate some of the expenses, if we can make it a little bit easier for people to experience their growing pains, eventually maybe they can get out of a co-location or an incubator and get their own facility, right? So this is a concept that I believe in. Obviously, there are some concerns that need to be addressed, that need to be identified. Right now, like security and presently municipal zoning regulations and potential wastewater management issues. There are some issues that we need to address. However, they're not insurmountable. And as I mentioned, this concept is already happening. It's just not regulated. And the people that are able to do it's because they have a lot of experience. But if we were to kind of carve out a pathway, I think that we'd see the number of Black and brown individuals, women-owned, people that have been disproportionately impacted. I think we'll see a lot, that the proportion of those individuals trying to get into the industry, I think it'll level out a little bit more. And also, by encouraging this type of environment, what you do is you end up passing on the burden of responsibility. I think it's really unreasonable to expect any organization to be able to create the kind of momentum that will offset like all the people that have the money, all the people that have the knowledge and the experience, right? What we're trying to do is create an opportunity for people that have been disproportionately impacted to get into the industry, but one organization is not going to be able to do it on its own. You're going to have the people, the recipients that do make it through and receive grace, they're going to have to be able to pass that down, send the elevator back down, extend that olive branch. So if we can do that, then what happens is we'll end up creating a compounding effect, a compounding vehicle. So it's not all on the SE program through the CCC. Actually, the CCC and the SE program in Boston, they bless one person, and that person turns around and provides an opportunity and blesses somebody else. That's the only way you're really gonna be able to balance the scales, if you will. I'll digress. Thank you very much. Honored to be here, and I'm excited to share my ideas.
Thank you, Ty, for your testimony and your presentation. Next, we'll go with Jay Cook.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Cook. You all probably know me either through Queen Cures or Alchemy League, which is the provisional license for recreational and medical that my wife, Leah Daniels, has here in Massachusetts. So Boston residents, born and raised. And I don't want to really repeat a lot of what's said. Councilor Flynn, I want to first thank you, actually, because I feel like you and I and Kim Janey, we was doing this a few years back, trying to make things happen, and it didn't quite work out exactly the way we planned. But the one thing you brought up was having businesses on top of one another. And Tito mentioned it as well. And what needs to change there would be zoning, buffers, being near schools, being near liquor stores. If they could switch that up, the city is already small. So if they could make changes there, I think that would be helpful. The one thing I want to mention, which I don't hear enough about, is for people that are in the industry but are not necessarily through the licensing process, to have a little bit more compassion and consideration for business owners that are. And I say that because we, with Revolutionary Clinics, we're working together to create a mentorship program. And the mentorship program is to help business owners, not necessarily people get jobs, because we already know we want to hire folks that look like us, that are from our city. And you get more backlash, believe it or not, from folks that are in the industry but aren't actually in the licensing process at all. They haven't applied for a license through any municipality or through any state. And since I know it's a public hearing, there are folks on, and it's 420, right? So happy 420. If we can just have a little bit more compassion and consideration for how people have to figure out how to get through the industry. Sometimes it's an investor. Sometimes it's Nana. Sometimes it's putting up your house. It's a process. And that's one thing that we never really speak about. The last thing I wanted to do was mention us highlighting or finding ways to highlight the non-licensing businesses, meaning trash removal and recycle, apparel, packaging, marketing, lighting. There's so many components and there's so many pieces in this industry that we could be supporting one another with and engaging in each other's businesses with, that have nothing, that you never have to touch the cannabis plant at all. You don't have to open a dispensary. You don't have to go through licensing. And so I think that if we start to kind of lay it all out, map it all out, and show all the components that are necessary to actually get a company up and running, we'll realize that there's more than enough for everybody. You know, we all can eat. We just got to put the plan together and figure out how we're going to work together. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Jay. And next we will go to Jeff Smillian.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, I meant. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for having me. My name is Jeff Smillian. I'm the CEO of Low Key Dispensary. We have 2 licenses in Boston. Actually, 3 licenses: 2 retail licenses, 1 in Dorchester, and 1 in West Roxbury, which we recently received 2 weeks ago from the CCC. It's been a long, brutal process, but the only reason I'm able to receive these licenses is due to my background and my work from commercial real estate. I have an unfair advantage as far as being a commercial real estate broker, and this cannabis industry, as everybody talked about earlier, it's about site control. So I was able to leverage my experience in commercial real estate and control 2 sites. And the 3rd location, which is a cultivation site, where I had a relationship with the current owner who I had recently sold the building to. And I was able to leverage that relationship for a cultivation license. Which leads us to reason why I'm here today. Is this conversation that we were having regarding creating a co-working space for social equity licensee holders or potential licensee holders to potentially work together at a location. So I have a presentation that I created with one of our team members. So we put a presentation together that I would like to share with you all. And hope you find it interesting and based on what Ty and everybody is talking about. But this is something that we put together. Hopefully we could have a better understanding of the long-term plan here.
So here at Low Key Cultivation, our mission is to create an inclusive cannabis industry by improving access to the information and resources necessary for cannabis entrepreneurs to start, grow, and maintain their businesses. We believe in the power of leveraging valuable connections and use our resources to transform the local economy. So in summary, who are we? We are a licensed cannabis distributor. We are a growing team of power players with a proven track record of business development, cannabis expertise, and community leaders. Okay, but this is the one I really want to emphasize. We aim to help Boston become the Silicon Valley of the cannabis industry. So Boston, of course, is known for the human sciences, biotech, pharmaceuticals, technology, right? So we put the likes of Harvard, MIT, and things like that. But we're fortunate enough to be introduced to this new market segment of cannabis. So how do we put ourselves and put the city in position to dominate and become known as the ones who are pushing that industry forward? So that's the mission. I think that's the opportunity. So everything in this presentation is about how do we facilitate that process. So let's talk about market conditions. So of course, with cannabis being new since January 1st, 2019, The cannabis industry has grown in Massachusetts alone has generated $1.8 billion in gross sales to date. Okay, so that's as of March 5th, 2023. But this is the point that I think is really, really good to key in on: licensed cultivation centers. There are 85 cultivation licenses issued in Massachusetts, but there are 0 cultivation centers in Boston. Okay, the closest location, I believe, is in Natick, Mass, which is 20 miles outside of Boston. So I think that's a really good thing to point out, being that we could be the first. Okay. Also, cannabis retailers, there are 211 retail licenses distributed throughout Massachusetts and 11 stores located in Boston. So there is a market for it, right? But like, how do we put this infrastructure together so that we can make sure that Boston is an active participant and an active leader within this industry? Okay. So that's the opportunity. And I think that's something that is really, really, really key. Of course, I do want to show the statistics and data here. We're talking about how the number of licenses has grown, the adult use sales projections far exceeded that, as I mentioned before. And then also we're talking about sales and the breakdown of cannabis products. Okay. Now, let's talk about the challenges of cannabis, right? So although cannabis is a fairly new industry, there are a number of challenges that present barriers of entry for many aspiring and active cannabis entrepreneurs. So we're talking about licensing and admin, right? We talk about funding and overhead. And then we got the commercial real estate aspect, right? So when it comes to licensing and admin, due to regulations, there are many licensing and administrative requirements that requirements to sell and cultivate cannabis. This requires a lot of time, right? It's time delays, which really prevents a lot of entrepreneurs from starting quickly, right? And it's also that time barrier also could, discourage people from even trying, okay? Fortunately for us, we have been approved, okay? Then you've got like funding and overhead. So acquiring and managing necessary facilities to grow, pack, and distribute cannabis at scale is extremely high, right? Paying for equipment, paying for everything that's necessary to meet the requirements of creating a quality product. So for us, where fundraising is pending, but it is something that we believe and we're highly confident that we can achieve. Now, commercial real estate. So cultivation also requires the acquisition of acquired space to apply for the active license. So not only can we not get the funding when we need the funding, but then we also got to find the real estate. Fortunately for us, we've already acquired the commercial space. So we already achieved 2 out of the 3, which puts us well ahead of a lot of entrepreneurs, right? We already overcome a lot of those barriers, but it's not just about us. How do we use our positioning, right, to benefit the many, right? We are, a select group, but it's not just about us. It's about how do we help Boston? How do we help the cannabis entrepreneurs? How do we help the cannabis industry as a whole? And we plan on being those leaders. So again, here's the ultimate question. How do we become the bridge to help others overcome these barriers, all while being the first to do it? Okay, so I mentioned, the cultivation center, the 0 cultivation centers in Boston, right? We're talking about growing industry. We also talk about all the barriers that exist. But one thing we're talking about is how do we create a co-working and cultivation center that incubates and helps accelerate the growth and development of the cannabis entrepreneur. And that's what we're presenting here today. So what are our pillars of success? So one thing I'm always talking about is like, there's a recipe to success, right? What are the things and what are the ingredients that's going to be necessary? So I want to outline a few here. So first, we'll talk about commercial real estate and property management. Yes, our team has access to the necessary facilities.
So I'll be able to share the rest of this video with you all and also a PowerPoint. But I guess I just wanted to go into this conversation with the fact that this is a great conversation that recently started. So at this time, we do have a location. Some of the obstacles are already taken care of. We do have a location, and we do have a license in place in the city of Boston that could serve the residents and the social equity licensee holder, potential licensee holders. So the question is, how do we make this work? So which is one of the reasons that we're all here today is to figure out ultimately how do we make this work together.
Thank you, Jeff. And now we'll go to, sorry, just taking a look at my notes. Jen Fago.
Thank you all for having me. Councilor Mejia, thank you for your leadership as usual in this work. My name is Jen Fago. I'm the Executive Director of Commonwealth Kitchen. We are Boston's nonprofit food business incubator and development center. As we say, our mission is to build a food economy that is grounded in racial, social, and economic justice. And I'm here to share a little bit of what we see in terms of the edibles part in the cannabis world. So we get a lot of inquiries of people who are interested in doing their own edibles in our facility. And currently that is not possible for lots of reasons that you all know, from a permitting perspective, from a health and safety perspective, all the things that my previous colleagues had mentioned. And so what we have found with a handful of our businesses is a workaround where we will do everything but the THC, everything but the flower, everything but and that works in a handful of instances, but largely is still a barrier for a lot of food businesses. And so we certainly see where there's opportunity to take the model that we have that could be put into a facility like what Jeff and Ty are working on. And so just to be very explicit about that, so Commonwealth Kitchen's role is really trying to be that intermediary for an entrepreneur on what does it take to start a food business in our case. Could be an edible business, could be something else. So helping people work through permit, license, insurance, food safety, in the case of edibles, the testing that's required, right? All of those things that are going to be necessary to make sure that we are keeping people safe, that we are treating our employees well, we're managing OSHA, et cetera, et cetera. People who use our kitchen, it is essentially, we describe it as a gym membership for food businesses is the simplest way to explain it. So people can come in and they use the equipment that we have and they can share it. So, and there are lots of procedures that we have in place to make sure that we don't have cross-contamination issues, that we don't have food safety issues. So similar things that you would find if you were trying to do what we do, but with cannabis included into that model. And so this is something we've worked really hard with the City of Boston and with the City Health Department to make sure, and the state, the Department of Public Health, to make sure that we have all the correct licenses and all the procedures around how you manage food safety. The other thing that we do that I have mentioned to several people that I think could be a possibility of how a shared facility in the City of Boston could work is that in addition to running that shared kitchen, we actually also have our own staff that manufacture on behalf of our businesses. And so the idea is that you have a business that's making cookies or brownies or salsa, or whatever it may be. And in our case, they get to a certain scale and it's a challenge for them to continue to produce it themselves, and really becomes a labor issue as well as a health and safety, food safety issue of their ability to meet all the compliance regulations. In those cases, Commonwealth Kitchen, we have a trained staff that is actually responsible for doing that manufacturing, where we are simply meeting the recipe and the specifications of that business owner to do the production. It is still their business, it is still their recipe, it is still their responsibility to go sell that product, but it allows us to manage many of the issues that can come up, I imagine in cannabis, but certainly come up in food more generally, around how do we ensure all the proper compliance with FDA, USDA, et cetera. And so this is a model that we have pioneered here in Boston. I know of no other shared kitchens in the country that do this kind of manufacturing. We see it as an enormous benefit to helping our businesses access markets that they wouldn't otherwise be able to, because it allows so many more people to be more confident, comfortable. It means that our organization is handling permit, but also things like insurance, the OSHA compliance, the food safety compliance. And so we can imagine that there is a model modeled after what we are doing that could be something that could happen with, for example, the building that Jeff and Ty are working on, or some other location. And so just want to share that our experience is that it's not easy to do. It's super complicated to sort it out, but if people are willing and ready to kind of dig in and do it, there are ways to get through it. And so we've been, feel like we've actually sort of opened the gates for businesses, particularly businesses of color who have been left out of the food industry, to give them a real chance to build a successful business as a means to build wealth, as a means to invest in their community, as a means to bring resources back and jobs back into their community. And so we can see how this concept of taking what we do and moving it into the cannabis industry can actually be a really game changer for the work that we're all trying to do. So just wanted to share that. Happy to share more about our model as folks go forward, but happy to see how we can be a support of this work. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. And now we'll go to Leslie Delaney Hawkins.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Mejia, as well, for your leadership on this important topic. Leslie Delaney Hawkins, I'm a partner with the law firm of Prince LaBelle Ty. My partner, Mike Ross, is also on the call. It's great to see so many familiar faces. As folks know, I came up working for the city of Boston and know that you have great leadership with Kathleen Joyce and her team. I also am, no conflict, but a board member of Commonwealth Kitchen. So it's great to see Jen here and to talk about the important work they do. I just want to make a couple of points. Obviously, this is a highly, highly regulated industry, right? we all know it's still federally illegal, which makes thinking creatively and taking creative steps even more difficult than it is in any other industry. And that's why I think it's so impressive that you've got all the right people in the room to really start this conversation, because it's not just as simple as saying we're going to allow for production at an establishment like Commonwealth Kitchen. There's layer after layer of regulation on the local level, the state level, and then the federal level, which, you've got the right players in the room to work through that. And I think this is off to a good start. I do want to comment on something that Mr. Jackson mentioned earlier, which I think is incredibly important, which is Boston equity applicants and the potential for a sunset clause on when those licenses can become transferable. Obviously, that's not the topic for today, but I do think that's an important topic that the council should really consider exploring more. But when we're talking about diversifying options in the cannabis space, I think one of the things that we've seen, especially with delivery, is that the money really is made with brick and mortar stores. And that's a challenge because, as everyone here is testifying, you need easily, I think Tito is underestimating the amount of money and time he put into this at 1 to 1.5 million. One of the real challenges in this industry is it's one thing to give someone a license or a host community agreement, but this isn't opening a coffee shop. The amount of regulations and the amount of work that has to go into building out these establishments far exceeds what I think anyone ever realized. And that's something that for all operators, but especially more than anything on the equity, social equity and economic empowerment side, we need to be providing these individuals the tools to actually build out, to get through your post-provisional license inspection, to install your security systems, your vaults, all of those things. And, seeing people like Tito and Jeff on this call who've lived it firsthand, we always say we're building this bicycle while we're riding it. We're doing it together. But this is not as easy as opening a restaurant, which is not something that's easy to do regardless. And then when you look at other license types like delivery, unfortunately, some of the regulations at the state level, this is not at the city level, make it impossible to be financially successful under the existing models. So we're trying to give people the tools, but we're just not getting there yet. And I think the same goes to when we're looking at manufacturing from, something like Commonwealth Kitchen or from someone's home. It's illegal, right? That's where we are right now. It's simply illegal, and we don't want to be putting people at risk, even with the respect that's paid to the legacy market. We don't want to put people at risk for boxing themselves out of getting into the legal industry because of how they're trying to begin their businesses now. And I think that's something where you've got the people in the room to have that discussion. The state absolutely has to be part of that discussion. And the other thing I would just say, and I agree with Tito, I don't think he's ever gotten me to agree with him this much in one call, but social consumption. Social consumption is going to be the wave of the future. And we're seeing other municipalities in Massachusetts look into it. We're going to see, I believe, new regulations being promulgated by the CCC in the fall. And I think that's something that Boston is a place that should be at the forefront of that. And just like delivery, we anticipate it's going to be limited to SE and EE applicants, at least for the foreseeable future, once it becomes something that could actually be adopted by each municipality. But there is a lot of work to get there. And I know you have Kathleen Joyce on the call, who oversees both the Cannabis Board and the Liquor Board. We all know there is no overlap, even with social consumption, between liquor and cannabis at this stage. But I think starting to kind of play the long game with social consumption and getting out in front of it is going to be crucial for Boston, and especially for our equity applicants. And again, on behalf of myself and my colleague, Mike, who I know has been in this since the very beginning and is even more in depth on it than I am. Prince Bell is here in any way we can help, especially with equity applicants or with the city as we move forward in this industry. So just privileged to be a part of this important conversation.
Thank you, Leslie. And as Leslie alluded to, we are joined here also today by former City Councilor Mike Ross of Prince Bell, co-chair of the firm's cannabis group. Mike, do you have any words or remarks?
Hi, Councilor. Thanks for the opportunity. Good to be here with you and Councilor Mejia. I'm really here just to listen. I think everyone's done a really good job of getting into it. I do think the ownership issue is something you can actually work on. A equity applicant not having the ability to exit, we know they can't go through bankruptcy, limited on what they can do with investors because they must own 51% of the application. I mean, that some of that's a CCC rule, depending on how they applied with their ownership, but there are more stringent rules in this particular situation at the local level, which could be changed by the council and then ultimately regulatory wise through the actual Boston Cannabis Board as well. So that might be an area that you look at. I agree with Tito Jackson that you don't want to create a door that allows for someone to get their approval as a Boston approved social equity applicant and then flip it a few weeks later to give it. I mean, that would be bad. That would be really bad. But limiting the social equity applicants from putting restrictions on their license that aren't in place for the rest of the market puts them at a disadvantage, no question. So that has to be addressed and resolved, and I think that would be a key issue. But it's, I think, more than anything, it's very important for practitioners like myself and Leslie and others to sit here and absorb the conversations that are being had with regard to, particularly in our own host community here in Boston, but in the industry. And what else are we going to do on 420 than get together here and have these conversations? So thank you for having the conversation. I agree with Leslie. We are a resource for the council, for the city. We can do anything to help for the industry. We certainly work a lot in it, so we recognize our responsibility to be a part of it and help make it better for all those involved. I'll leave it there, and thank you for the opportunity for getting me in there.
Thank you, Councilor Ross. And Councilor Mejia, sorry that you came off of mute. Chair recognizes Councilor Mejia.
I just wanted to thank our additional guest speakers, and I also wanted to just note for the record that Chantal from IGR is asking if we can bump up someone to a panelist from the administration. Just wanted to note, everybody knows that I'm all about all means all, and it's Miss Shakia Scott as a panelist, who I believe is going to be representing the administration. So from what I understand, she is a attendee, not a panelist, and we need to change that.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. So now we'll go into the administration panel, which is Shakia Scott. Shakia, when it's your time to present, can you just let us know your job title and what department? And also Kathleen Joyce, Chair of Boston Licensing Board and Boston Cannabis Board. We'll start first with Commissioner Joyce.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me today to participate in this hearing. As Council Morrell said, my name is Kathleen Joyce, and I am Chair of the Boston Cannabis Board, and I have served as Chair since its inception in 2020. I want to say we are here to be part of this conversation. The Boston Cannabis Board was created to cite cannabis establishments across our city, and it's been given an explicit charge from you, the City Council, to prioritize equity. The city created an equity program that provides grant funding and technical assistance, which Shakia can talk about later, for applicants who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. We have a duty to maintain a 1-to-1 ratio of equity to non-equity applicants, and we strive to do better than a 1-to-1 ratio. I'm really proud to say that we have no backlog. I also want to clear the record that you do not need to have a lease to secure a cannabis license in this city. We accept a letter of intent. That is different. I also want to say we've had conversations about sunset clauses. Chief Idaru has been open to those conversations, and we will continue to explore those things. The Cannabis Board is empowered to issue and regulate the license types that are authorized by the state legislature. As you all know, those include retail marijuana establishments, medical cannabis dispensaries, courier delivery services, delivery operators, product manufacturing, cultivation, testing laboratories, transporters, and research facilities. We do have co-located medical and retail establishments in the city. We actually have 8. To date, the City of Boston has signed 71 host community agreements. 39 are equity, 32 are non-equity, across 19 neighborhoods. Of the 71 host community agreements, 21 locations are already open for operations. That's 8 equity locations that are open, 13 non-equity. We have 51 recreational retail cannabis dispensary host community agreements. We have 6 delivery host community agreements. We have 8 co-located recreational medical, 2 cultivation and manufacturing, 2 manufacturing and retail. It's important to note that cannabis is still a legal substance at the federal level and highly regulated at the state and local level. For these reasons, manufacturing cannabis products at home or in a shared commercial kitchen is not allowed under state regulations. Should that change, we are here to help draft regulations and make it possible to open, always with an eye towards equity. We hear constantly about the barriers to entry and expanding the cannabis marketplace, and we take that seriously. We've been invited to join the CCC in crafting regulations that will continue, and we will continue to advocate to put equity first as social consumption becomes legal. We participate in these conversations with the CCC and other municipalities. We want to ensure that any changes at the state level can be quickly operationalized in Boston so that our equity applicants can participate fully in this industry. So I am here to answer any questions. I'm here to be a partner with all of you, and I am here to help move this industry in the right direction.
Thanks, Kathleen. The floor now recognizes Shakia Scott.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for sponsoring and even just thinking of an order of this nature. My name is Shakia Scott, and I am currently the Cannabis Business Manager in the Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion. I was formerly the Director of Equity and Community Outreach for the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. And so I'm happy to join you today and partner with you and speak about this topic. Today, I'm kind of just going to paint a background of our equity program and some details into barriers we've encountered that may, echo a lot of what you've been saying today, and kind of give some more insight into areas where we could alleviate barriers by diversifying business models, however that may look. So currently in my position, I oversee the city's cannabis equity program. I certify applicants and provide assistance through the process in collaboration with the Boston Cannabis Board. Additionally, I manage the Applicant Technical Assistance Program, which helps new and existing cannabis businesses launch and strengthen their operations and provide support to cannabis entrepreneurs at all stages of development. Moreover, the Boston Equity Program offers grants, as the Commissioner alluded to, that provides financial assistance solely to certified equity applicants. This program is overseen by Joseph Gilmore. So far, we have certified 41 equity applicants. However, this number is higher than the number the Commissioner alluded to because this represents each business that also has multiple locations. So for the equity program, each location has to be certified separately, so that we know and we're keeping track of what location is getting grants and what location is receiving technical assistance. Just to reiterate, of the 41 certified applicants, 8 of them are currently operational. While this number may seem low, it's higher than the state's number of 8%. Boston is sitting around 38% of operational businesses being those of Black or Brown, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, Indigenous. And we're shooting for more, of course, with our 1-to-1 ratio. To date, we've contracted with 11 technical assistance providers with expertise in areas such as law, engineering, architecture, business consulting, web and app development, HR, and accounting. With our technical providers, we've initiated and completed 28 technical assistance projects, with most projects focusing mainly on architectural or engineering needs, website development and design, and general process navigation assistance, including real estate locations. Our grant program has distributed 41 grants totaling $658,000, around $659,000 since its launch in 2020. The most common requested areas of assistance through the grant fund are rent, architectural or engineering needs, legal fees, and security. As a note there, after the first round of grants, which had a limit of $15,000 per grant, the grant program through our legal department is no longer able to give grant funds out to rent due to a city law. And so that may be something that we could also look into to alleviate some of that rental financial burden that happens with these new opening businesses. To increase these numbers and ease barriers to entry more, our RFP for technical assistance providers is opened monthly. It's on a rotating basis. The current contract doesn't close until March of 2024. So every single month, including right now until May 1st, that RFP is open. And then we review it within the first week, and then it will be reopened for the next month. And so if there's anyone interested, or if you're looking for technical assistance, I see some of our equity businesses on this call, which we love. That's an opportunity there. We're also currently working on a cannabis empowerment series that will roll out in June. We're actually partnering with a local equity business in this venture to empower, enable, and educate Boston and the Massachusetts area on our program, but also how to get into the industry and supports that both the city and the state may have. So we'll keep everyone up to date on that, but I'm also here to answer any questions or provide any other additional insight that you guys may need.
Thank you, Shakia. And it sounds like that has wrapped up our panels. So now we'll go to questions from counselors, and we'll go in the order of arrival, starting with Councilor Mejia, the original co-sponsor.
So I just want to say thank you all for coming here with a can-do attitude and a growth mindset, because this is what this moment is asking us to do, is to really identify what are the barriers and where are the opportunities for us to push a little bit more, because I've seen other cities and states, and to Commissioner Joyce's comments, that there are some things that we can't do just because of the laws. But I'm from the school of thought that just because something is a law doesn't necessarily mean that it has to stay that way, right? So if there's an opportunity for us to identify what are the things that we need to change and to push and to amend so that we can get to where we need to be, then that's really where I want our energy to go towards, which is why I invited Jen to be a part of this conversation, because thinking outside of the box requires listening and learning to what other people have gone through, and also inviting Jeff because they have a site, and I think only collectively working with the commission, the administration, community advocates, experts, and the council can we get to where we need to be. So I'm encouraged and I remain hopeful. for what is possible. So with that, let me ask a few questions, and I'm not sure who would be able to answer this. When we talk about the dollars that are available, what are the grants that are available to support minority cannabis business owners? Can you just tell us a little bit more about what dollars, how many dollars, and when we think about supporting cannabis business owners, are we just supporting folks who want to do delivery and open up a shop, or are we also having grants for people to think about food infusion and other HVAC and marketing? Or like, can you talk to me a little bit about kind of the scope of service for grant making in this industry?
Sure, I'll add a little bit of information there. Joe Gilmore actually oversees the grant, so if there's additional information, I'll definitely have him follow up with you, Counselor. But right now, the grant money comes from 5.5% of the 3% tax that the city gets on each operational business. And so that kind of changes from fiscal year to fiscal year, or from tax term to tax term, but it generally breaks down into about $300,000 per year or per fiscal year, and sometimes exceeds that. So because right now the grant program is only available, it has kind of some barriers, but it's just to make sure that the grant money is going to businesses that are going to be operational in Boston. So there's 3 key things that you need. The commissioner mentioned, 1, you do need a lease or a letter of intent. To be eligible for a grant, you also do need your ISD refusal letter. You must also have had your community meeting as well for your business. But the grant is open. The only real restriction that we have on the grant, technically from the city's law department, is that the money can't go directly to rent. But there's no real specific buckets that the grant can or cannot go to. So people just apply, they really just write out what the intention for the money is and where, in a detailed budget of what services they're using or what service providers they're using and how much those things cost. And then they are in a review process with a 4-member review board with a few different key things that they're, rubric that they're judged on.
Thank you for that. And I'm curious, and I'm just trying to, I always think about this work as like, how do we eat an elephant? It's just like one little piece at a time, right? Because there's a lot that we're trying to do. And, change is slow. But I'm curious, I think about Low Key and the cultivation site that they have. I think about Commonwealth Kitchen and the model that they have. And I think about what role the city can play in helping to develop, whether it be a pilot, an incubation space for folks to be able to make a product that then they can then sell to some of the cannabis shops, right? So let's say, for instance, if you are like Oliver, he has this hot sauce, right? And you have other people who do edibles and brownies and food infusion. I'm just curious if you could share, anybody here on the panel can really share with us kind of what it will take to be able to create space for small social entrepreneurs to be able to have a location that they can establish a small business in a cultivation site. What would it take to do something like that? Let's just say that there's no laws. Let's forget about the Kathleen. I see you smiling. Let's just hypothetically say there aren't any laws from we approved all the laws that we need to. Actually, could somebody Ty, I think you might know what are some of those barriers, what in terms of the law, so that we can get those on the record if anybody knows it. Mike or Leslie, anybody or Kathleen, just what are the 3 major laws that are in place right now that are going to prevent us from doing this? And then I want to hear what are the things if those laws were not an issue or a barrier, what are some of the things that we can do in the city to help support this idea from manifest?
Sure, I'll give a crack at it in some perspective. So if somebody wanted to create an infused product, that's already a license type as a processor, or other states call it product manufacturer. So it's one of the license types that's the smallest barrier of entry, because you don't need to have your location on Main Street, and then you don't have to do as much to build out that facility. This model, product manufacturing, is already really happening with organizations like Rev Clinic that was mentioned earlier. They're doing that right now. Only we call it like licensing deals, even though you don't officially have a license. You can call it white labeling, you can call it co-packing. Essentially, you enter into a legal agreement and you're operating under the umbrella of the license holder, essentially, and you pay a fee for that. So that's like really low-hanging fruit, low-hanging opportunity. Now, imagine if, okay, so what are the barriers? Well, what do you need was the question. You just need some space. And a lot of times you don't need a lot of space, and you don't need all the space. You might need, on the low end, it depends on the product that you're building. But if it was something simple, like say something as simple as a pre-roll brand, right? Like the brand I have, just pre-rolls. You need like 200 square feet. You need some stainless steel benches. You need some storage space, right? That's essentially all you need. And then you need somebody that's going to make sure that you're operating compliantly and that you're, entering things into metrics, which a lot of times the person that is facilitating, the person that has the brand, doesn't have any control over metric, because you need a license to do that. So I think the conversation that we should be having is, how do we take what's already happening and maybe and allow that brand owner to have their own license, which would increase the value of that business and attract investors, right? How do we let that brand owner have an actual license and be able to have access to metric inside that facility, since it's kind of already happening? I don't know if I answered all your questions, but
I think so. And I see, Jen, you came on the screen, so please.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. And just to sort of put a sort of a different spin on what Ty said, is that if this is food, then you have to meet all the food regulations. So in the city of Boston, if you are selling something in the food world retail, so I as a processor, I'm selling it to somebody directly and they're eating it, that is a city of Boston license. If I am making a product that I am a brownie or a hot sauce or whatever, and I am then selling it to a facility that they in turn are selling it, that is a wholesale license. That typically then requires, on the health department side, it requires the state to be involved. And it moves into the federal if you add things like ice cream. There are certain things that require federal licensing for lots of different reasons. So part of the question would be, start with the end in mind. What's the goal? Who are you trying to support? In the world of food, you think about a kitchen, well, the equipment for a hot sauce company is different than the equipment for a brownie company. So kind of, is there a sense of where you're trying to start with that? There's then the licensing around the food side and how you do that. And then within that, then there's a bunch of like requirements around like how you clean things, how you set up different ways of doing the processing. So all of that stuff would need to get sorted out in order to then have a location, and then add to that things like what's the permitting requirements and the zoning requirements that go with it. But there are some kind of health department food barriers you'd have to think about. And as I say, really it's more about understanding where you're trying to go, and then how do you take those first few steps, as you're saying, Counselor.
Thank you, Jen. Commissioner, Leslie, Mike, Tito, I'm gonna call everybody. Anybody else want to chime in? Because we really, for me, I don't like to bring people into the table I'm really hoping that as a collective here, we can have solution-oriented hearings where we're walking away feeling incredibly inspired about what the next steps are. And the only way that we could do that is if we understand what are the barriers, but then also how can we work around them. So it's really an invitation to kind of like bring our best thinking into the space. So I see, Commissioner, you have your hand up.
I do, thank you. And I could be misspeaking here, but I think my role would be the easiest part. It would probably be the last thing that happens, the license that's given out for this space. I think the most difficult part, just based upon what Jen was describing, would be the food permitting part, making sure things are kept at the right temperature, stored correctly, food safety issues. You know, obviously, if this was going to be like some sort of food hall and people wanted to be able to walk from one end to the other with an alcoholic beverage to go someplace, we'd have to make sure the liquor license was in place properly as far as access and capacity and stuff. So that's just, again, just trying to hypothesize here. I think we would just be one small part of it, and we would probably be the last part of it.
Thank you. Councilor Jackson, or anyone else?
Hello? Yes, I just want to chime in. Another thing that, I mean, as I showed the proposal earlier, the video earlier that we were currently working on. So we would love to continue working on a plan, on a proposal to present to everybody here to actually see how we could make this work. I mean, with the likes of Ty here, Leslie, Jen, I think that collectively we could come all together to actually put something together that addressed all the concerns, all the safety issues, you know, because everybody here has some familiarity to every component that requires us to get these licensing. And currently we do have a location, we do have a license in hand. So now it's just really going over the CCC laws and the guidelines, like you said, Commissioner. You know, it's all about laws that we could amend to make things happen, and you know, I'm all for it. So, like I said, we already started working on this presentation, so we'll continue to add on to it and all these concerns and address every issue that on the state level, on the CC level, on the federal level, so we can make this work. Because I think there's actually something here. There's a great opportunity here. There's a 24,000 square foot lot, building already up and running that we just have to really build out. And, you know, we have Shakia here as well that could, you know, help us with the funding. So again, all the components are here. So it's just a matter of everybody here working together and collaborating to make this thing work. So I'm all for it. And I plan on reaching out to everybody individually for a meeting and to continue adding on to that PDF, to that presentation that we already started working with. So I thank you all for this opportunity, and I see this working. So it's just a matter of timing, and it's just a matter of us really putting it together and putting our best foot forward and making this thing work. So let's level up.
And Councilor Morrell, I know my time is almost up, so I just see that another former counselor, Councilor Ross, let me give you some respect to that name too. And I see your hand is up, so you'll be the last person that can speak on this round, and I'm gonna give it back to Councilor Morrell because I think I'm over my time. But go ahead.
Yeah, just to make an offer to you, Councilor Mejia, that, you know, I mean, this is all we do. Clients reach out to us and ask us, how do we do the following? You know, what are the hurdles? And you know, that's what we do. So if you want to put me in a room with anyone to blue sky these items, you know, off the clock, I'm happy to be available and just have that conversation, make myself available to you. And Leslie Hawkins as well. She's a terrific attorney, and we're happy to do that. That's what we do.
Thank you. Y'all heard that, everybody in the public? We got some reinforcement, so that means that the can-do attitude, we're gonna make some things happen here. Thank you, Mike, for offering yourself up and your team, and I really am incredibly hopeful. This is not a hearing just to have a hearing about a hearing. This is really about how can we transform the lives of those folks who are trying to get in and think outside the box and provide people as many options into this industry, because not everybody wants to open up a shop. Oliver just wants to make his sauce and sell it to whoever wants to sell it to. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's lean into this in a way that is going to be, you know, inspiring. And I see that Colorado, I believe, has already done something like this. I mean, I know there are other folks that have done it, and I think we we can too. Councilor Morel, I know, Mike, you've been incredibly generous.
Yes, I have been gracious, but however, you are the original co-sponsor, and I know this is something that you're passionate about, and supporting small businesses is something that you led on from the very first time you touched the council floor. So I wanted to make sure that you had time to speak to and get all your questions answered. Most of my questions were answered either in everyone's presentation or during your round of questioning. But I guess I do have one question. Like, this is for Commissioner Joyce. Is there a cap at how many cannabis licenses the city of Boston is able to issue?
There's no cap. We have a minimum.
Okay, what's the minimum?
53 or 56.
We have to issue 53 licenses.
Yeah. It's a direct correlation to the number of package store licenses in the city. It's a percentage of them.
Got it. And I mean, I feel like Boston is a big town, but it's actually pretty small. Like, if we're able to issue those 53 licenses and we have the half-a-mile buffer zone, like, is that really a policy we could uphold as we issue out 53 licenses?
It's a really good question. People want a minimum of 53 licenses, yet they don't want anyone to open up within a half mile of their own location. So it becomes very hard when you're given a mandate for 53 licenses. You have to find ways to pierce the buffer zone in a fair and equitable way.
And I see Ty has raised his hand, but I guess my other question is, have we started to think through, like, what is that fair, equitable way? Is it foot traffic? Is it car traffic? Like, how do we
go through that analysis, Counselor, at every single hearing. We have a score sheet, and on the record, we analyze what it takes and why we would pierce the buffer zone. Is an application unique? Is it bringing something different to the community? Does it offer the patron something different? A recording studio sometimes is different than a retail establishment. You know, you have to ask those questions. Is it some sort of organic product that you don't find anywhere else in the neighborhood? Those are questions I, as the chair of the board, ask every single time of an applicant. And I will continue to ask those questions because I can't do my job and cite a minimum 53 of these licenses without piercing the buffer zone.
Thank you. I see, Ty, you have your hand.
Yes, thank you. Really quick. Commissioner, does the buffer zone apply to all cannabis license types, or is it just retail?
It applies to all cannabis license types.
Maybe that's something that could be considered, because I think that it's a valid position for retail. However, I don't know that it is valid for product manufacturers and, you know, cultivators.
That's what we would take into consideration in our analysis. You might find someone on the commission saying, geez, there's a buffer zone here, but we're talking about a delivery within 3 blocks of a retail. Is that like a true issue? Is it a true, you know, burden to the delivery operator that a retail place is opening up down the street or vice versa? You know, I think you have in place a 7-member board. Right now, we only have 4 members of the board. We have a 7-member board, and we ask those questions.
Very cool. Yeah. So I would just say I think it's worth considering maybe removing the buffer for other license types like testing, product manufacturing, and cultivation specifically. Just an idea.
Yeah, and that's something that City Council would have to do. I'm not empowered to remove that.
Got it.
We will. Don't worry, Ty. This is why we're having this hearing, so we can learn about everything we need to do differently.
Right. Absolutely. And thank you, Ty, for that recommendation. I saw Councilor Jackson, you came on camera, and not sure if you had anything to add to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. As noted, the council does have discretion here. There are several municipalities that actually only look at the space between actual dispensaries. And let's also be clear on why that is. A manufacturing facility is not going to have a line down the street. A cultivation facility is not going to have a line down the street. The people who are going to visit that space and place are going to be the workers. And then there's a requirement that we have to actually have this transported by a licensed company. And so where you get into potential issues, and obviously when in 2018, when things opened, there were lines down the street. And you're dealing directly B2C with actual customers. As Ty noted, the pieces around basically all other license types other than retail as well as social consumption are really innocuous when it comes to being close to one another, because if run correctly, you would not know where a cannabis manufacturing plant would be. And if run correctly, you would also not know where a cannabis cultivation would be. It should be run in a method, for a whole host of reasons, it should be run in a manner that you actually don't know where it is. But I do believe that to be the case. So I think the council does have discretion there. And then also the council does have discretion around the distance between facilities and the like. So there's an opportunity for the council to clarify, weigh in, as well as update any of the legislation that has been passed. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councilor Jackson. And I'll say, does anyone else want to weigh in to this question? Councilor Mayor, I saw that you have your one off mute.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask you if you were going to give another round of second
Yeah,
question.
I'm going to give it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just about to go right back to you. Just want to say thank you to everyone who showed up today and lend their voice to this conversation. Please, Councilor Mejia, look forward to working with you and everyone else in this room on trying to removing some of those barriers in order to create the support system and make a more equitable cannabis industry here in the city of Boston. With that said, we'll go back around for second round of questions, starting with Councilor Mejia.
Thank you, Councilor Burrell. I was just going to, this is a practice that I have been implementing in other hearings, right? That I think, the way it's structured is that the councilors usually ask questions to the administration. But to Ty's modeling that behavior, I really do appreciate you asking questions as well. And I'm just curious, as we continue to pivot onto the public testimony, that before we wrap up this section, especially for like Tomas and Jay and, and Jen and, Leslie and Mike and Tito and the whole crew that's been here, are there questions that are still on your hearts and minds that we should bring into the space and get on the record while we're all here together before we wrap up our time? And that includes you, Commissioner, if you have questions of the audience too. This is all about everybody, right? This is really, I'd like to utilize the rest of the little time that I have to open up for that type of engagement, if any, that you all are interested in bringing to the space before we close out this section. And if not, you've said what you've said, I'm good with it. But if you haven't, I'd love to create an opportunity for that to happen. Commissioner, I see your hand up. And then Jeff.
Thank you. I do have a question. Since we're here working together, trying to brainstorm and learn from each other, it's not as easy as it may seem to evaluate these applications through a fairness lens. We try really hard, and I'm always asked, geez, if we were to lock down the downtown now, would that mean we would not have any more applications in the downtown area? We've been criticized publicly. I've been criticized privately for allowing too many licenses, specifically in the downtown area and piercing the buffer zone. I stand behind my decision. I believe every vote I've taken, I've backed up with facts and not just opinions. And so I'm left with the quandary, now that we have, as former Councilor Jackson said, I think 7 locations within his buffer zone, and he actually pierced the buffer zone. What are we to do? Are we to say no more applications downtown? We had one yesterday that was downtown. So should we just say as administration, go elsewhere, go out to Hyde Park, go everywhere? I can't force an applicant to open up and submit an application in a neighborhood. These applications come to us organically and we review them as they come in. I can't say, you would be better off going somewhere else than downtown. So that's like a constant tension we have as a board, or as I do as the chair. As these applications go, it is public support and public opposition, but we're like, it's a predicament of ours. What if Ty wanted to come right now and he had a great application? Am I supposed to say, geez, we've been criticized the last 6 times we let a place open up downtown, even though I may truly believe the foot traffic or the pedestrian traffic or the business traffic could support it? Are we going to make a policy that no more applications could be heard in this area? That's something we have to ask ourselves. Like, what are the unintended consequences of saying no or of piercing the buffer zone? When I'm tasked with making sure these places open, it's not as easy as saying you're going to hurt someone's business. I'm on top of it as much as everybody else. I see that there are no lines when I walk by these places, but you as a body have tasked the board to review these applications as they come in. And we take that very seriously. So I ask anyone here, what are we to do? What is your advice to us as a board and to me as chair? What do you think we should do?
I see 2 hands up, and I'm hoping they got some advice for you, Chair Joyce, which you should fix your, it says chair. Make sure that everybody knows that you're the chair of that commission, okay? Go ahead, Jay.
Hello, everyone. Jay here. So I think something that actually happens often is people will put in an application and not realize. So, for example, if I put an application today for the address that I'm sitting in right now, and tomorrow, based on the applications that are already in, you approve one that's across the street, I'm out of luck, right? Because I'm within the buffer zone. So I feel like maybe having a map up, and I know it's hard because you look at these applications as they come in, but if folks know where provisional licenses are, so if there is a map that says provisional licenses are here, these applicants are up there before you, it actually makes it very complicated. But if there's a map or encouragement, or even with the CCC, partnerships with people that have property and are looking to rent that property to, we'll just say cannabis industry members, or sell their property, maybe there can be some relationship. So that way, maybe Hyde Park is better if there's only one applicant out there. If there's only one business in Hyde Park, that business is going to do well. If there's only 2 businesses in Hyde Park and they're 3, miles away, or half a mile away, or mile and a half away, they're probably going to do better than 10 downtown. So I think there's a lack of communication and transparency of where people are and then where they end up. It's almost like people are stuck. Everyone wants the high foot traffic areas, but it doesn't mean that something that's a little bit more on the outskirts of the very inner city aren't better. And so I think that communication is missing and that transparency is missing, because a few people have run into the same issues where, well, I've been renting this space for a year waiting for this application to get approved and go through, and then the person right across the street.
We have a map. It's on our website. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
I know I have, but what I'm saying is maybe this is something that while you all are approving applicants, like you're stating it a little bit more frequently so that the public knows. I think that there's just missing information that they don't know. And maybe they would have 6 months ago or a year ago chosen a different location had they known.
Thank you.
But I think oversaturating one area is unfair, and I would encourage, and you can encourage by making partnerships with property owners and folks that are trying to rent and or sell.
I thank you, Jay, and thank you, Chair Joyce. I do have one question. Is there any other industry, Chair, where there's an oversaturation of businesses? Like, is there oversaturation of restaurants in the downtown area? Is there oversaturation of...
No one wants a restaurant in the North End, and no one wants a new restaurant in Brighton. Talk to the legislature. I think you'll have a hard time getting additional licenses in those 2 neighborhoods, Councillor.
Right. Yep, sorry, Councilman, do you have a...
No, I just want to acknowledge that Councillor Jackson.
Yep.
And Jeff and Ty have their hand up. And I know that I've opened up a can of worms by allowing this to happen, but I would rather use my time to share with the people. So,
right. I understand. Jeff, do you still have, I know you was next. Do you still have a question? No? Okay. So Ty?
I'm giving my time to the people.
Ty?
Yes.
Jay, that's the question that I had. I'm sorry, so I have my hands down.
Go ahead, Jeff. You were first, Jeff. You can go.
No, I think Jeff.
It's on you, Ty.
Jeff said
okay.
The question was already had, so it's going to be
Yeah, my question already asked.
Got you. Commissioner Joyce, I feel for you. I don't know that there's a clear answer. You have a challenging job. Even in areas like Los Angeles where they try to mitigate it, where they try to do studies and tests and have a certain number of licenses that they'll award per district based on their undue concentration, it's still challenging. Also consider that sometimes you'll be asked to change your rules and regulations based on the current state of the market, but cannabis in general fluctuates pretty hard because a lot of people come in, it gets oversaturated, people are going out of business, so then it becomes a race to the bottom in certain sections of the industry. But it goes up and down over the years. You're going to see a lot of this instability. It's really a retail issue. I think that you probably do want to limit the amount based on the data that you have for a certain amount of time. And if that changes over time, maybe you can make more licenses available. So maybe it's like, we're going to cap it right now. We're only going to award per district this many. But in the future, if there's a higher demand, that, so it's not like hard and fast. It's not like, no, never again. But it's just like, at this time, we've exceeded our limit. We really want to see how this plays out for the next year. And then we'll revisit it. I don't know. But it is definitely specific to retail. And also you're going to have to look at cultivation a little bit, not as much as retail, but cultivation a little bit too, because if there's more supply than there is demand, you're going to have the same type of issues. What I will say is on the other license types, there's so many opportunities for people that want to get on the product manufacturing and processing that's really, like I said, low hanging fruit. And somebody asked some of the opportunities earlier. I wrote some down. I'll spit them off real quickly because I know we're running out of time. But like somebody could get into cannabis just like creating vapes and concentrates, or co-packing, simply buying flower and putting it in a jar or a Mylar bag and working on a brand, supporting the brand. Like I mentioned, pre-rolls, post-harvest support. So actually having a cultivation facility where you take someone's flower and you cure it for them and you bag it and you process it for somebody else. Or even co-packing, if somebody wanted to go in just facility and they were working with smaller retailers or delivery operators and said, you don't have the capacity to build a brand or build a product, let me do it for you. I'll make a little bit of money co-packing it for you. And that's all I'll do. I'll just take it, put your brand on it, make it easy for you. So these are like low-hanging opportunities that you're not going to experience this undue concentration, because on the product manufacturing side, the customer is all the retailers. So the goal is to get into business with all the retailers throughout the entire state. On the retail side, over 70% of that business is coming within a certain circumference, a certain radius of where that location is actually positioned. So yeah.
Thank you, Ty. And I do have a quick question for Chair Joyce. Is there a timeline where we have to meet the minimum, like the 53 licenses to be doled out?
No, there isn't. But I think Ty raises some really good questions, which we've been grappling with too as a board. We recently did a saturation study, which was sort of inconclusive, but it's something we'll continue to take a look at. And I think you raised some really good issues that we have to continue to think through. So I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Councilor Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you for this innovation, and as well as Council Mejia. Thank you for the innovation in this type of conversation. One of the things that I would note is relative to the issue of oversaturation. Downtown is larger than half a mile. And I will note that the area that I'm talking about is actually 7 within half a mile. We're not talking about the whole of downtown. And so I think it's actually really critical that a couple things happen. So one, I do appreciate the board. I appreciate Chairwoman Joyce and the work that she does in earnest on a day-to-day basis. One issue that I actually do want to address is that oversaturation is something that throws a bucket of water on investment, right? Because if investors are not, if we tell investors, if we tell investors that we have a half a mile radius, that's a buffer, and then you go back to those same investors and you want additional investment, you've now not told them essentially the truth. And so it's already hard enough to get investment in this space. And I will note for you, we got control of this building in the beginning of January 2021. We didn't open until 2 months ago. So we had to carry this building, and as the chairwoman noted, as a LOI or a lease, our owner wants to rent on a monthly basis. And so it is very difficult after being a couple of $1 million in to then have new people, because they applied, get the same level of consideration. So I would note one of the things that we should look at, the state legislation is written as alcohol. A lot of references there. And I would submit to you, we probably would not add 7 package stores to any one neighborhood in earnest in a very short period of time. And so I think we do need to be very thoughtful in particular and look at the impact that this has on businesses that are owned by people of color. MSOs have unlimited amounts of money. And for those who don't know what that means, that's a multi-state operator. They're public companies. They have millions and millions of dollars that we're talking about. And so if we're really trying to do this, that is critical. And then this is also compounded by the fact that we then can't sell our business, right? So we have a double whammy, because you put us in a situation where we have, again, no other place in the city that I know of has 6 other people who are within a half a mile radius of them. But then if someone were to come in and say, hey, we want to give you a boatload of dough, you don't actually have the opportunity to actually make an exit. In addition, I do want to stress this, as noted before, there are not, if your business doesn't work, normal bankruptcy is not even an option. For us in our space. So I think one of the things I would say is, as Ty noted, there are components of having some level of a cooling off period. And then I would also note that in the alcohol space, oftentimes sometimes they say no to licenses. And that is also an indicator industry-wise as to go look someplace else. And so I think there is a component, and when I was on the council, the reason why this buffer existed is because we were looking at medical in the beginning, and we wanted to make sure that there was at least one store in every single neighborhood. And that is actually not even the case yet in terms of the stores that are actually opened. And so there's an opportunity. I understand this is iterative, and I can't imagine how hard it is. But I also will note for those people who are open and in the space that it is absolutely critical that we address this piece. And I think the council has an opportunity to give some clarity and be prescriptive here relative to how this works, because the board has their regs, but these components are components that the city council can actually go back to the enabling legislation and actually make some decisions on relative to the legislative side.
Thank you, Councilor Jackson. And Chair Joyce, if you want to respond directly to anything that Councilor Jackson.
Yeah, just two things. And I appreciate this back and forth because it's important to get it out there. And I think Councilor Jackson's right. When you do reject an application, you're sending a message, we don't want a location here, or your application is not ready for prime time. We've rejected applications before. We've sent that message. There was one in Chinatown at the very beginning of the board, and there was one where they tried to open up right next to Bridge Over Troubled Waters. And I think some city councils supported it. I was just absolutely against it. But there was always a process to pierce the buffer zone. And I feel for those that didn't realize that there was a process in place and that may have told people that there was no way another place was going to open up within a half mile. You can't open up within a half mile of 500 feet of a school. That cannot be pierced. But there was always a process to pierce a buffer zone, the half mile buffer zone, 2 different types of buffer zones. So I apologize if the misinformation was out there, but this isn't something new the board did. And obviously I wasn't on the city council, so I don't know about your statements about medical, but I believe the intent was to make sure we had these locations in every neighborhood of the city. They weren't just clumped in certain neighborhoods, that people had access everywhere. And we do look at these things through the lens of equity and what it means to the other applications. But we do have 7 package stores in the same neighborhood. Some might offer something that others don't. Like, that is not a true statement. We do all the time.
Thank you, Chair Joyce. Councilor Mejia, that's how you came up.
I just wanted to say that I opened up a can of worms because I like to do things differently, and I'm so sorry, Councilor Morel, but
that's all right.
I truly believe that the greatest learning is when we create space when it's not just councilors asking questions, but that we allow some organic dialogue to happen between the panelists that are here. So I do want to be mindful that we do have people that are signing up for testimony, and I see Absolutely. That Councilor, former Councilor Jackson and Ty both have their hands up, and I just want to be mindful of that time and just wanted just to reiterate that.
My goal is to get us out of here on 420.
No, we got public testimony. We're not out here for 420.
It was a joke, Councilor Mejia.
Oh, I was about to say Ty, and then I think
after Ty, we'll go to public testimony.
Thank you.
Really quickly, guys. So my question is pertaining to an SE license holder exiting. My understanding is that if you do not have retained 51% ownership, you lose that equity status and the perks that come with it. Is there anything else that happens above and beyond that if you dip below 51%? Like, is the license actually revoked? Got you.
Yeah, you can't transfer that much. To hold on to your equity status, you have to maintain 51%.
To hold on to an equity status, correct. But like, if you lose the equity status, that means when you have to renew every year, you no longer get that 50% discount. But that's what, no?
No,
it's a little bit different.
It sort of doesn't work that way. And that's why I think we're thinking about how do we sunset this in some way that's, allows people to build wealth. This is one of the reasons why I think when people talk about alcohol licenses with no value, they really don't build wealth for people.
Got it.
If you can't go out and refinance or mortgage something, like how does that help you?
For sure.
Well, thank you, Ty. Thank you to all the panelists, Councilor Jackson, Leslie Hawkins, Michael Ross, Thomas, Jess Million, Jen Fago, Jay Cook, Chair Joyce, and Shakia Scott for joining us in this important conversation. Please feel free to stick around for public testimony. It looks like we have 2 people signed up for public testimony. Please raise your hand and we can get you to testify. The first to testify is Desiree Franjul.
We may have more people that are not having their little hands up, but.
Hi, thank you. Thank you all for having me. I've been waiting a while. I think this is a great platform. Thank you, Councilor Mejia, for hosting this hearing. Councilor Flynn, former Councilor Tito Jackson, Chairwoman Joyce, and Councilor Worrell. I think this is an amazing conversation that could have happened a long time ago, but I'm glad it's happening now. First, I just want to say something in regards to Jay's comment for Chairwoman Joyce on, how do we make this a more transparent process? And I think I definitely think that what Jay is saying is would be helpful. My experience is that when we come to hear of a proposal, the proposal has already gone through ISD. They're already hosting a community meeting. But maybe if there was a way in which we can see when applications first come in. The initial application that comes in through the BCB, where you need an LOI, then we have to file with ISD, and that takes like 2 or 3 months. And by the time you're having a community meeting, it's 4 months in, and then by the 5th month, you're at the BCB. But maybe having something on the website, whether it be on the BCB or the ISD, ZBA, or in collaboration, where we can see if I'm applying for a proposal at 329, then I can see that a month later or a month before someone else applied within the same buffer as I, as opposed to like finding out once they're having the community meeting and they're months in. I think that would be helpful. And then as far as, just having co-locations, I think, my dream, my goal was really to do manufacturing and also do the retail to go hand in hand. But it's really hard to do manufacturing because like in a lot of states, and I think Ty might know this, but in a lot of states, the best way to do manufacturing is if it's tied to a cultivation. And unfortunately, if you're a small scale manufacturing company and you're focused on edibles that are like gluten-free or vegan and the market is not as wide, you're not going to start off as the big company. You're going to start off a smaller scale and work your way up. And so I think that, having the idea of co-location would be good for social equity applicants like myself who sort of want to start off small and having a small scale manufacturing, whether they're making edibles or lotions or oils for people to consume. It's the best way to get in the industry without spending $500,000 and having to gather investors and needing an LOI and all that. So I think the co-location, as Ty said, has worked in other places across the country, and I think it would work here too, especially with the rent being so high in Boston. But just giving small businesses and social equity applicants like a foot in the door into the manufacturing game. If they don't want to do cultivation, if it's just manufacturing, then that would be a good way for us to get in the industry. And that's about it. But I do appreciate the dialogue today and everyone coming out. And I hope that we're able to have more conversations like this as the regulations for social consumption and things move forward in the industry. So thank you all.
Thank you, Desiree. And just want to reiterate for all the attendees, if you wish to sign up for public testimony and have not done so, please email Ron Cobb at ron.cobb, C-O-B-B, at boston.gov. For the link in your name will be added to the list. So that's the way that you're able to testify. Please email ron.cobb at boston.gov. With that, our next person signed up for public testimony is Big Hope Project. If you can raise your hand.
Just want you to know that JC also has their hand up. And I think the people who are tuning in, if you are signed up for public testimony, you have to raise your little hand so that we can bring you in as a panelist. But right now, I see JC also has their hand up.
Yes, but we also want them to email Ron Cobb so that he could get them on the public testimony list. Is Big Hope Project in, or is that JC?
Mr. Chair, that's the concern we have now, is that we have names, but they don't identify, and we don't know exactly who they are. And they don't have their hands raised.
Right. So,
right. Are we able to bring, the only hand raised right now, Ron, is
JC.
Is JC. So I am assuming that it's Big Hope Project.
No, this is JC. I'm not JC in the Big Hope. I'm sorry. I'm gonna send an email to.
We have you here now, JC. So
yeah, go ahead, JC. You're here.
The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes. Please state your name, any affiliations.
I'm sorry. Can you guys just give me like a quick 5-second? What is this? Just like public testimony regarding what? I joined late. I wasn't aware of this. I was sent this hearing, but I have a lot of comments regarding the process and just the licensing and the cannabis market in Boston overall. So can you guys just tell me what we're talking about really quickly?
Yes, we're talking about all of that. So anything regarding licensing, the process, or even the industry, anything related to cannabis.
All right, great. I'll start from the beginning. When Kim Janey pushed the ordinance to basically set up the 1-to-1 ratio, there was already about 9 non-equity entities approved. So those 9 equities were approved, and then we started doing the 1-to-1 ratio. So right now, there's more non-equity proposals approved than there are equity proposals. This kind of ties into what a lot of people in the city feel we should have a cap on licenses. Right now, we're driving the car and we're not looking up to see how many headlights are in front of us. The city had a mandate of doing at least 52. I think we're well into the 60s, going on 70 approvals. The minimum is 50, so now we're approaching 70, and there's no slowing down in the sense of approving more approvals. And the more approvals go through, that gap only grows bigger, right, between non-equity and equity applicants. I think that we should revisit that from the beginning. I think there was an opportunity to do that, but there was also a very high demand and need to start in getting things rolling. So I understand that. But I think now, when we look at that through the lens of, should there be a cap or no cap in the city of Boston, we see in that cities and towns in Western Mass have already done this, because there is a certain amount, there is only so much that the city or an area can sustain, right? So we're seeing Northampton, they put a limit of like 8 or 9. I think the city should consider that, because right now what we're doing is it takes 2 years to open. So social equity applicants get their approvals, and within 2 years, there's more competition coming, especially the competition from the non-equity people, which is the most hurtful for us. So I think that we should look at a cap on licenses through a lens of equity. We should do a tally, first of all, how many non-equity to equity licenses we have. We should put a moratorium on the amount of non-equity licenses, let the equity licenses catch up to that number, okay? And then look at the data and say, all right, how many people are at the building permit? How many people are stuck at their provisional? And kind of balance things out to see how many can we expect, like what a run rate of how many can we expect are going to open this year. I think the city of Boston has less than 20 stores open, but we have almost 70 approvals. To kind of get a gauge on that, because we go into these things based on certain financial models. I'm not saying that how many approvals, how many stores that get approved matter in that, but it's changing, because Boston was one of the last cities in Massachusetts to get their stuff together. So we have people from the city that go to the suburbs right now to cop product. And once those consumer behaviors get created, they stay like that, right? So you have people from here going to Braintree or Quincy, from the Boston going to Quincy. Now we lose those people as potential revenue. So we just have to look at it like, throughout the whole state, but then specifically Boston. I think that it would help equity applicants and just equity in general for us to kind of look at how many equity, how many non-equity proposals we have, tally those up, put a moratorium on non-equity, let the equity people catch up, and then really look at like buffer zones in a different way as well. I think what happened to the gentleman in Blue Hill, where Cleon, I believe is his name, he got approved, and then there was a store that was within 200 feet that got approved. But that store got approved on the condition where if Cleon didn't move forward, then that entity can move forward. I think that should have been used, that tool right there could be a lot more useful if we apply it to more locations than just Cleon situation on Blue Hill Ave. It could have been the situation in Brighton with the Dr. Green Thumb guys and the social equity people there. It could have been more useful in the Back Bay area where, Desi's proposal at 329 got approved, and then within months there was another one approved within her buffer zone and air's buffer zone. Like, I just think that tool maybe should be used a little bit more when determining buffer zones, because otherwise we're just stacking them on top of each other, and it's not really helpful for equity people. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, JC. Thank you, JC. It doesn't look like we have any other, any more public testimony. With that, we will go to Councilor Mejia, the original original sponsor for any closing statements.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to acknowledge Chair and Commissioner Joyce, for Kathleen, for staying with us throughout the whole entire time, and for being open to what I'm going to call like a really thoughtful exchange, right? Because you were able to hear directly from people. They were able to provide some input. And I just think that we need more of this in City Hall. We need more opportunities for us to be in direct community with each other. So I appreciate your grace in allowing for that space to happen, and for you to seizing that moment and asking for feedback. And the same with the panelists for really bringing your full selves into this environment and helping us really understand kind of what your life is like and what you have been navigating. And I think that for me, because I am always committed to figuring out what is the pathway towards everything and anything, because I do believe that everything and anything is possible within the constraints of the law. And I also believe that the laws are written sometimes with good intentions, but they have bad impact, right? So I think if there's anything that we could do differently moving forward is looking at what already is in existence, listening through this hearing, identifying areas of improvement, and creating space for all of us to have some time together to think through what are we going to do about it, right? Because what I don't want, Chair Joyce, is to come back into the space with a whole bunch of things that are going to be, that are going to make it a lot harder for you to do your job, right? So the goal for me, as the lead sponsor of this hearing order, is to create an opportunity for us to continue this dialogue, have several working sessions so that we can continue to build with each other, and then present something that will pass legal muster, right? And that won't create more hardship on our community that we're trying to support, the administration and the commission. So I think that all of those things need to be aligned for us to get to the finish line. And just in terms of timeline, for those folks who are tuning in, we definitely are looking to do something about what we've learned here today. So we're not just going to have a ceremonial 420 public hearing and we're like, thank you very much, and leave it there. That our goal is to really carry this into something that is going to have a lasting impact here in the city of Boston. And we are inviting you to join us on that journey. So if you are interested in informing that work, please email our office at julia.mejia@boston.gov. And let us know that you want to be a part of this movement, if you will, because it's going to take all of us working in different ways to build out this work. And I just want to thank the chair for allowing me to sometimes derail the hearing and be like, oh, I'm going to just cede my time and let people talk instead of me. So I'm so sorry for doing that, but I appreciate your grace and for allowing me to be as disruptive as I was today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia, and thank you for having the idea. I thought it was very productive. I thought it created a new space for a conversation and ideas to free flow, which we have not seen in the City Council before. So I do appreciate the opportunity to share such an innovative idea, and I think it could be the motto, going forward. Just want to also just thank everyone that was here today that lent their voice and signed up for public testimony. I also want to just say thank you to Chair Joyce for all your work and your commitment to the city of Boston, and always being a resource of information and good. Always work in collaboration on ideas that our office has had with moving equity forward here in the city of Boston. You know, we worked on the liquor license, a home rule petition that we passed on the council, and that's now at the State House. And I know that you're always willing. You always picked up the phone and always willing to lend your expertise and your knowledge to the conversation. So thank you so much, Chair Joyce. And thank you to everyone else for doing the work. And my recommendation will be, as Councilman Mejia said, leave this in the working session to continue the conversation, to make sure that this conversation is still free flowing. So please be on the lookout as we continue to do this work. Thank you, everyone, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.